Now, the float-based layout is really a bit of a hack, as the intent of the float property is really for embedding of images and callouts in the sides of text content, kind of like this callout in a collegiate article. Unfortunately, floats and tables were the only mechanisms in earlier versions of CSS to allow for more nuanced layouts. However, that has changed with CSS3, which introduced several layout algorithms to supplement the additional flow and table ones. One of these is Flexbox, which we're going to explore now. Now, this particular site, A Complete Guide to Flexbox, this is a really good reference with a lot of visual explanation of how Flexbox works. So I'd suggest you take a look at that as you move forward. Okay, so it's extremely easy to set up Flexbox. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to change our class so that we can keep our old class there as a reference, but we're going to actually create a new one, and we'll call this one Flex Columns. And once we've made that change, we can jump to our CSS, where we're going to add the rules to work with that Flex Columns. And how Flex works is it is a different display layout algorithm, so we set it with the display property. We're going to pick Flex. And we also need to tell it what direction it's going to flow. With Flex, we have a number of different directions. Those can be a row, row reverse, column, or column reverse. So we actually can control not only if it's laid out as a row or a column, but the order that the items inside the container appear. So in this case, we'll go ahead and set it to row. And that's really all we have to do to set up our columns. Let's see what they look like. And you can see it's created for us three columns, and that they are evenly spaced out. We don't have the kinds of problems we saw with the float. Now, we do still have these columns kind of running into each other. That's something we could sort out by adding a bit of padding to each column, or we could set them to a specific width, and then we could use the floats justify content to spread out the extra space between them. But the nice thing about floats is if we went back in and added another column in here, it would automatically resize the three columns to allow for space for a fourth column. So it would actually resize these and make it fit the space. Or if we deleted one of the columns, it would evenly space the two columns. So it's a really handy and fast way to do a layout. Now, we also want to go back to stacking these when we're looking at it in a smaller screen. We can go ahead and make this responsive with another media query. We'll go ahead and use the max width property again. We'll set this to 490 pixels as we have previously. And inside of this, we'll have to use the same selector. So we'll grab our Flex Columns, and we'll go ahead and set their direction, flex direction that is, to be a column instead of a row. So we'll go ahead and leave it as a flex container. We'll just switch the direction that it's running. And if we refresh our page now and look at it on a smaller screen, notice that we fall back to making this a column now. So we've switched from the row to the column. We make it back into a full screen, we get three columns. Make it to the smaller screen, we get one column. And we don't need this clear fix div. It doesn't hurt for us to leave it in, but you can see that in many ways the flex approach is very quick, very easy, and very flexible. And if you go and dig into all of the different properties that you can use in Flex, there are properties that this whole column, for example, applies to the container, and this side applies to specific items within the container. There is a lot of control. You can even make it dynamically reshuffle based on media rules, so you have elements appearing in different spots depending on what size resolution screen you're looking at it with. So this is a very powerful and very useful tool for you moving forward.